It's always a pleasure to introduce a video to you which shows work being done correctly by operators from all over the world, because it gives us a chance to see how well-trained operators set about these recovery and towing jobs. Our first one this month is a standard overturn of a trailer and tractor in very confined circumstances, as you can see. Fully loaded. This is, according to the information I have, 54,000 pound load, and the operator has decided, hardly surprising in view of that wall, to use air cushions to do some of the hard work. When trailers are flat down in these sort of circumstances, you have to make several decisions. And in this case, it looks as though he's taken his options and decided that air cushions are the best approach. There's the starter cushion, which is doing its job on the curved corner of the trailer. As you'll see during the rest of this video, there are times where it's preferable to lift the corners of the trailer using a tow truck and a hydraulic or other boom. But in cases such as this, where it's so flat on the road that there's no possibility of getting a strap underneath to make the initial corner lift, then it's far better to call for the air cushions as part of this operation. Now, one of the things that we have to think about whilst we're doing this type of work, of course, is the final invoicing. I've discovered, as a result of researching across the United States, that it's fairly standard these days to charge a flat figure of $1,500 to $2,000 for sending out air cushions and for using them in any way whatsoever. Now, this is important. When I say in any way whatsoever, you needn't necessarily use the air cushions for the uprighting of the trailer, although this is to be preferred, but very often you will have to use air cushions to re-site the load inside the trailer. If, for example, when it comes up, you find that it's the load is leaning to one side and you can't tow the vehicle away without re-siting the load. So you have to consider whether you think this owner is going to be willing to pay for air cushions and whether you can prove to him that air cushions were essential. Now, looking at this accident under this bridge, this operator will have no trouble in producing proof from videos such as this to show that he had no option but to use air cushions. And I think he made absolutely the right decision. Notice the way that these orange cushions operate. They tend to make a lot of noise whilst they're opening their envelope, as it were, and getting to the right shape. Some of the noises can be quite alarming. These operators are very skilled at what they're doing. That's highly skilled. Actually, it's very sensible. He's trying to get it flat enough so that it'll slide under this gap. And I've no doubt it'll work. It does. So there's all sorts of classifications of skilled operators, this being one of them. A cushion only needs to be basically a half under to give you quite an effective lift. As long as you remember that when a cushion is only half under, by the time it gets up to about a foot high, there is as much thrust pushing the load off the cushion as there is lifting the load. So it doesn't really pay to leave cushions a half under above about a foot high. Notice how he has quite rightly left the starter cushions in position, and there's no deflection in that trailer, which is quite interesting because it must be very fully loaded. It's a reefer, so it probably is quite tightly packed. But those cushions are not deflecting the side of the trailer at all. And there's fact, there's an optical illusion. It almost looks as though that cushion isn't connected to anything, but it has to be because it's filling. Remember, each of these cushions can push 20,000 pounds vertically. So there's more than ample power to lift this load. When a trailer is lying over on its side like this, provided that it's flat and not over centre, then you're only lifting half of the gross load. Supposing this trailer is 60,000 pounds, then you're lifting 30,000 pounds, which in actual fact two of these cushions could do on their own. But you wouldn't have the support that you need to make these cushions do their work without damaging the trailer. This is a good time to check and see where you're going to put your chains on for the final overturn. He's picked a point just forward of the twin wheels there, where the spring mounting is lending extra strength to the frame. And that looks to me like an almost perfect job. Beautifully situated. And you see, there isn't any need to use high hydraulic booms here under this bridge, as the cushions are doing all the hard work. And in fact, if this trailer is 60,000, as I believe it is, then at this particular juncture there's not more than 20,000 pounds of load left on those cushions, as the load comes off as the angle gets more severe. That happens to be an aircraft or tanker cushion, which is the size of two ordinary cushions, and has an enormous push of 56,000 pounds on its own. So if it wasn't a question of supporting the sides, really you wouldn't need the rest at all. The drawback to these giant cushions is they're so difficult to handle, but obviously this customer has found it to be worthwhile buying, and certainly here you can see why. What the operator's doing here is supporting the hose. Now, this was a problem with earlier orange cushions made up until about 5 years ago. See that right angle bend in the hose? Well, it tends to shut off the air supply, and frankly we didn't learn about this until we'd been supplying these for many years, and nowadays we have a different type of hose that doesn't shut off, so you don't get this problem anymore. Looks like about a 20-ton hydraulic wrecker they're going to use here. Having, oh, that's a restrainer. Whether you use a restrainer on a recovery of a trailer is very much a question for you as an expert. For if the load is solidly packed, there isn't any question that a restraining wrecker is superfluous. If the load inside the trailer is not tightly packed, or maybe consists of swinging meat or some other loose subject, or has very heavy objects inside, such as maybe a forklift which may have broken away, or sheets of metal, then of course you do need a restrainer. Another point is that if this trailer would happen to be an ISO container, one of the C containers with the brackets lifting holes in the corners, then it's very unlikely that you need a restrainer anyway, because it's going to require winching to the ground to get it to sit over. So here we are setting up the restraining vehicle. And I imagine this is being done because they're weighed up that the load inside here might shift and cause the trailer to bounce on over. In actual fact, the amount of bounce that a trailer does is very, very little. You can only produce a bounce when the trailer is empty. When it happens to be at its most dangerous, because it can certainly bounce over the other way then. But for a fully loaded trailer like this, this is quite a luxury. I don't blame the operator for doing what he's doing. He's using what we used to call in England a belt and braces approach. He's making sure that he's not going to make any mistakes. And with an undamaged trailer like this, you can't blame him. Now we're around the business side of the wreck, and I don't know what we're using on this side. We're going to see in a moment or two. We have two straps on. Oh, well, it looks like don't exactly know what that truck is. It doesn't look very big, but then it doesn't have to. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? There, he's restrained it. See, it only moved 12 inches and the restrainer picked it up. Now he's lowering it to the ground, and this one's not doing any pulling at all. That's a remarkable job. Look how, yes, he may well applaud. You feel quite proud of yourself when you've done this sort of work. Excellent. Really good.